Welcome to Witchcraft Beyond the Basics. There are plenty of class handouts that go with each and every class. And this one, we have, I think, 4 handouts plus a few recordings. One is the recording of an old teleseminar that I did for this course several years ago. And then there are some meditations as well. So you'll receive a lot of materials, and you can download those right straight from your lesson page. And we'll review them all together in class. Going through a witch's primer for basic training before doing Witchcraft Beyond the Basics is not mandatory, but you might not get as much out of this class if you haven't done a witch's primer first. So you may want to consider going through the primer first and then returning to this after you finish that, but that's completely up to you. First, let's just revisit briefly the witch's pyramid. If you remember, the witch's pyramid is faith, imagination, will, and secrecy. What I notice with people when they work magic is faith is the side of the witch's pyramid that can be the most challenging for them. Our doubts about whether we can achieve our goals or deserve them often stops us before we even start. And these doubts are often our most significant obstacles to success. The biggest issue I've noticed over the years working with people is their lack of faith in themselves, their magic, and their ability or their deservingness to achieve their goals. When we don't love and respect ourselves, sometimes we inadvertently work magic against ourselves rather than for ourselves. We must accept who we are, where we are, and the circumstances of our lives, and love ourselves right where we are. Without this love, acceptance, and forgiveness for ourselves, our magic has very limited power. Some magicians and witches who don't love and respect themselves may seem to have strong willpower and achieve temporary results, but these results rarely last, and they usually come with a lot of unwanted baggage. I want you to please approach the work that we're doing here with the mindset that you're doing it out of self-love and self-respect. Let's discuss the 2 levels of the mind and how they relate to this faith on the witch's pyramid, and then we'll finish up the pyramid. We have 2 aspects of mind, 2 functions of mind: the mortal mind or the surface mind or the conscious mind, and the immortal mind or the deep mind. I often refer to the surface and the deep mind as masculine and feminine. So the God mind or the masculine mind is the surface mind, that's the seed, and the deep mind is the feminine mind, that's the womb or the earth. The surface mind makes choices and holds our personalities, our desires, our perceptions, but it's limited in creating lasting change, and it often gets us in the way of what we truly want. When the surface mind dumps a bunch of negative thoughts into the deep mind, which is the fertile ground of our magic, those thoughts can oftentimes take root. Think of your surface mind again as the seed and the deep mind as the soil. If you fill the deep mind with negative seeds, you're going to see negative results taking place because magic is how life works. It's just natural. And you're already casting spells. So now we want to cast our spells consciously and make conscious choices about the kinds of spells that we cast rather than letting them happen by rote. When you start noticing negative patterns in your life, you need to start looking for ways to change, heal, and accept responsibility for whatever your part is in creating those patterns. Now, I'm not the kind of person that blames everything on ourselves. If you were raped or you were abused or somebody took advantage of you, took your money, I'm not ever going to tell you that you created that reality for yourself. But you can take responsibility for the fact that it happened and do something about it. And you can accept responsibility for any part that you did play in it, even if it was only 1%. You can take responsibility for that 1%. And that 1% is everything because it's what you have control over. And that 1% is like that tiny grain of mustard that can change the whole thing. Self-love is like cleaning a casserole dish after cooking something in it. Just imagine a casserole dish that's got baked on crusty stuff. When you start washing it, the water might start to get dirty and to the naked eye look worse before it gets better. But if you keep scrubbing and then rinsing, the dish eventually becomes clean. And the same kind of principle applies to our minds. When we start loving, respecting, and accepting ourselves, it's like pouring clean water into our deep minds. And at first, things might seem to get cloudy and murky and yucky. And people think, oh no, it's getting worse. But it's not getting worse. Things are actually improving. That's the power of pure love, the power of life itself working to bring our minds back to where they are meant to be. When we address the deep-seated issues in our deep minds, they stir up and clean out, allowing us to create what we do desire in our lives. However, we will get disruptive results if we try to create change without addressing the underlying patterns that enable the problems to persist in the first place. We struggle often with faith because we've tried so many things that didn't work before and never dealt with the root patterns in our minds that were responsible for the problems. So next week, we're going to start working with the waning moon energy, and I will provide you with some banishing exercises. And that's not really what we're doing this week. This week, instead, our homework involves in making detailed lists of what we don't want in our life and what we do wish to eliminate. And this is all written out as part of your homework, so you don't need to write down or take notes if you don't want to. Just be aware that the lessons may not completely, perfectly sync up with the lunar phase. We may be slightly out of phase. That's okay. You can still do the work. And if you want to really sync up with the lunar phases, you can wait on certain things until the next lunar phase if you desire. But if you're a little bit out of phase and you want to go through these lessons live, it will work just fine. It's okay. You're going to be listing some unwanted circumstances and things about yourself that you feel wrong about, things that you feel like you might need forgiveness for, or people in your life that you might need to forgive, negative stuff that you've been ignoring. We're going to bring it up and you're going to start working on it one step at a time during the next couple weeks. It'll help us to attract the things that we truly do want, making changes that last so you don't have to keep repeating the same spells over and over again to achieve the same goals. Like you don't want to have to cast a spell every month to pay your rent, right? You want to cast a spell that takes care of that pattern where you're always trying to scramble for your rent money. And that's more of what we're doing in the intermediate classes. We're learning how to cast spells that actually have long-lasting power. We need to incorporate a type of strength training into our routines to achieve lasting strength. And we must constantly tell ourselves, I can do this and I can have what I want. I can make positive differences in the world. I can release old patterns. I can be happy. I can be joyful. I can be free. I can be prosperous. I can be healthy. I can be wealthy. I can have companionship. I can have positive relationships. I can have a nice home. I can have nice clothes. I can have a nice car. I can express myself and have the career that I want. I can have anything and everything that I want that I once thought was out of reach. This week, in addition to listing some of the things that you want to release and banish, you're going to also start making lists of things that you do want, things that you want to do and be and have. There's also an exercise for this week on writing a full-page essay, handwritten if possible. And only you will see this essay. Let's see if you feel like putting in the effort because it will pay dividends. It's up to you whether you want to do all of this work or just pick and choose. That's totally up to you. But you will get more results if you do more of the work. The essay will be a vision of your ideal life, including your finances, your relationships, your home, your friends, and whatever else is important to you. You will write it out and you will make it as visual as possible. We'll focus on that over the next 6 weeks, creating that ideal life for you, eliminating what you don't want, creating what you do want, shifting your mind to have faith that it is possible to achieve these things and that they are on the way. You will see significant changes in your life over the next 6 weeks. We are all about getting results in this class, not just discussing theories. That's faith. Now, imagination. Many people struggle with visualization because they don't believe they can visualize, but you can. We all can. Our minds are hardwired to visualize. Don't worry about it. Anytime you're reading a book, you're visualizing. When someone tells you a story, you're visualizing it. When you daydream, you're visualizing it. During sexual fantasies, you're visualizing. Visualizing is natural and easy. People think they can't visualize because they've been given useless exercises in magical trainings. Visualize a circle, visualize a square, visualize a star, visualize a cube, visualize a particular scene. They lack passion. No one cares about a blue globe or seeing somebody walk across the room. These are meaningless exercises. They make you think that you can't visualize. Of course you can visualize. When you focus on what you genuinely want, visualization comes naturally. Don't worry. When we work on visualization in this course, I'll ensure that you get every bit of practice you need. It's simple. If it feels complicated, stop. It's wrong. Go back a few steps. You can do this. In this class, we're going to explore some very complex topics. It's an intermediate class, so expect a lot of material. If you feel overwhelmed, don't stress. Just pause. Revisit the witch's pyramid: faith, imagination, will, and secrecy. That's everything you need to be successful in magic. The rest that we're talking about and we're working on is there to help you to deepen and hone your magical skills more quickly and efficiently. But if you feel overwhelmed, stop and then start again once you feel comfortable. Anyone who has completed a witch's primer knows that the fire week was usually the most challenging for most people. If you finished that, congratulations, you deserve a gold star. People often think they need to will things into existence. But your willpower on the pyramid is there to keep you focused on your goals. Once you've done your work, it's not up to you to make magic happen. You don't have to will things into being. It happens naturally. Sometimes this means that you will take action. Sometimes you will get an intuitive hit to do something that doesn't even seem related. You won't even think it has anything to do with your spell, but it ends up being the thing that brings your spell into being. For example, I needed some working capital for my business. I needed $5,000. And I focused on what I wanted. I did the work, I let it go, and I didn't think about it anymore. That's my willpower was done once the spell was done. Then my willpower was focused on keeping me not obsessing over the goal, letting it go, letting it manifest. I had to will myself to forget about it and to move on. Out of the blue, someone I hadn't talked to in about 5 years mentioned that they wanted to buy something that I had. And they asked me if I still had it and if I wanted to sell it. Of course, I wanted to sell it because I wasn't even using it. And just like that, I got the $5,000 I needed without having to do anything. If I had tried to force it, I might have wasted a lot of time and energy. Instead, I just let it go and let things happen naturally, and it all worked out seamlessly. And that's how it's supposed to work. It's supposed to be easy. So when people think about their will in the pyramid, they don't understand that doesn't mean that you're micromanaging your spell. The will is there to keep you focused on what you need to be focused on during the spellcasting process and then after the spellcasting process. And after the spellcasting process, for me, my willpower is mostly focused on keeping me not thinking about it anymore and letting it happen on its own. When people hear about how easy it can be, they think, whoa, wait a minute. If it's not hard, have I really earned it? If it's too easy, is it really worth it? These are beliefs that you want to examine. Why can't it be easy? Why do we have to struggle and suffer? Where does that come from? Now, there's nothing wrong with hard work. I work really hard at what I do, but I also love what I do, so it doesn't feel like work. There's nothing wrong when things come handily to you. There's nothing wrong when things come easily and gently and effortlessly to you. And there's nothing wrong with you loving what you do, so your hard work feels like play. Then there's secrecy. Remember that secrecy is crucial for protecting your spells. Keeping them secret shields them from external negativity because people might consciously or unconsciously try to interfere. By keeping your work silent, you maintain its power, its focus, and its integrity. Magic requires concentrated power. A seed planted in the deep mind eventually blooms. If you talk about your spells too soon, it's like digging up the seed before it can grow. So keep your intentions to yourself. This doesn't mean that you can't seek guidance from teachers or peers on techniques, but keep your specific goals and spells as private as you can in order to stay focused and effective. You start with a desire. You want something. That desire fuels your imagination. Desire and imagination working well together. You might add a ritual to this and add emotion to this and enthusiasm to this. You have a ritualistic blend of desire and imagination. And during your spell work or ritual, your will keeps you focused and prevents your mind from wandering. And the result of this concentrated desire, imagination, will, and then secrecy provides a thought form. And that thought form, like we said before, is like a seed, which then is nurtured and fertilized with your faith. Faith acts as the fertilizing ingredient. And you'll learn more about this in other classes. Alongside your faith, you should fall in love with what you want. You want to fall in love with the idea of what you want. Like you're falling in love with a companion. You want to protect your thought form with secrecy until it manifests. Let's talk really quickly about your sphere of influence. We want to evaluate our sphere of influence on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 representing something that you believe is impossible, like perhaps an amputee just growing a new arm. While that may not be entirely impossible, theoretically speaking, it's not very probable, practically speaking. On the other hand, a 10 would represent something that's so easily achievable, like filing an insurance claim for the prosthetic arm of that amputee. That wouldn't require any magic. It's something that could just be done. So that's a 10. So 1 is something that you don't think is possible, and 10 is something that's so easy and possible you don't need to do magic on it. So what we want to do is aim for goals that have about a 7 or 8 even on this scale when working magic. Especially at this level, if you've made it through a witch's primer, you can push into your sphere of influence up to about an 8. If 8 is too stressful, then pull back a little bit. Anything below a 5 is too impossible and too stressful, while anything too close to a 10 is too mundane, like performing a spell to buy a gallon of milk. You could do that without magic. So I think about a 7 or 8 is nice because it's not going down so low that you're getting stressed out, but it's not so high that you're forcing yourself to cast spells on things which you can just do. You don't need magic. So consider when you're listing your goals on your homework, be, do, and have, rating each of them on your sphere of influence scale from 1 to 10, 1 being the hardest and 10 being the easiest. Just try to be as honest as possible. You can then assign another number for your level of desire, 1 through 10. Anything below an 8 on the level of desire is likely something that you think you, quote, should do, rather than something you generally want to do. And anything 8 to 10 is something that you really want. Items rated 7 or above are so highly desirable to you, are highly desirable to you. Aim to categorize your list so that when you're picking things to work spells on, that your sphere of influence is around a 7 or 8, and your desire level is somewhere between a 7 and a 10. If you want something rated 10 on your sphere of influence, if you want something that's rated 10 on your desire level, but your sphere of influence is way low, say at a 5, the two can sometimes counterbalance each other. You want it so much that you can make it happen even though it seems so impossible. Just play with that idea of understanding the balance between how much you want something and how possible you think it is. And I like the rating it from 1 to 10. So when trying to hone in on your faith in yourself and in your magic, there's a thing you can do. First of all is list the things that you want to be, do, and have, or things that you're trying to get rid of. You might want to make a list, and this is extra credit. You also might want to make a list of things that you think you should do. Compare the should list with the things that you say that you want to manifest or the things that you say you want to get rid of. If it's a should, don't work on it because it's not high enough on your desire level. If you're doing something because you think you should do it rather than you want to do it, there's not enough energy behind it. So just let those go for now. We don't want a should list. We don't want to should on ourselves. You want to make sure that you're working on things that you truly want. There's another interesting exercise to strengthen your faith that's silly, but you may want to use it. It's not mandatory. It's called the I can method. And you get a tin can, like for some mixed nuts or almonds or canned tomatoes or whatever. Wash it out, get it nice and clean, and then attach a picture of an eye to it. You can get the eye from wherever. You can draw it, you can download it, you can cut it out of a magazine, whatever. And you can decorate the can however you like to, but just make sure that there's a big eye on the outside of the can. And you're just literally telling your deep mind, I can. I can. I know that sounds silly, but I have known so many people that use this method, and I have myself, and it really works. Whenever you struggle with a lack of faith, either in a spell or with yourself, write down what you're struggling with on a piece of paper and put it in your I can, and repeatedly telling yourself, I can. And that reinforces your belief in your abilities. Many people have experienced so many excellent results in boosting their faith by using this method. It's so much more powerful than it seems on the surface. Again, it's not mandatory, but you may want to get yourself an I can or make yourself an I can. And anytime something doesn't seem possible or you don't have faith, write it down, stick it in your I can, and just remind yourself, yes, I can. One item on your list of things to address could be your blockages to faith. Ask yourself why faith is so hard for you and work on removing these obstacles by using magic. You could write down a list of reasons why you don't think you can have something, be something, or do it. Typical reasons are that you might not feel good enough, smart enough, pretty enough, thin enough, young enough, old enough, etc. Regardless of whose fault it is that you got where you are, nobody's going to fix it for you. So it's up to you to do it. The time is now. You are here for a reason. You didn't just sign up for this class because it was interesting. You signed up because you were ready for a change. So you can do this. Yes, you can. It's not going to be hard and challenging. It's going to be fun, and you're going to be successful. We carry hidden beliefs that we can't achieve what we want, or that it's selfish to pursue our goals, or who am I to want something when other people don't have it? I should be helping the world. But by clearing out your own mental and emotional clutter, you're helping the world. Reducing psychic garbage within yourself benefits everyone. Working on your goals actually helps the world. I'm not saying you shouldn't volunteer and that you shouldn't do community service. Of course you should. I do it too. But don't think of that as separate. What you're doing for yourself is also helping the world. Anytime you better yourself, everyone benefits from it. And don't forget that. If you can, work on being in a living space where you can be yourself. That's another goal that you may want to start prioritizing. If you are in a place where you can have an altar, it's a good idea to have an altar. And an altar can be anything you want it to be. A typical altar for generic purposes would have either a black or a white altar cloth. But a lot of times we'll change the color of the altar cloth to different planetary colors depending on the planet we're working on. But one thing I've done is instead of buying a bunch of different colored altar cloths for my altar in the past, rather than having 7 or 8 different colored altar cloths, I bought little placemats. I bought a purple placemat, I bought a green placemat, I bought a brown placemat. I would buy different colored placemats, and I would put the placemat on my altar based on the planet I was working with. And that was a nice, easy, and affordable way for me to have different colored tablecloths on my altar. So that's something that you might want to consider doing as well. Most of us have 2 large candles, either pillar candles or taper candles, and they're usually white in color on the right and left rear of the altar. They're called sentinels, technically, and they represent the life force. You can add symbols of all the 4 elements to your altar. You can use your tools. You could use a bowl of earth or salt for earth, or you could use a plant for earth. You could use a candle for fire, incense for air, a bowl or chalice for water, etc. Or you could just put your tools out there. You can be as explicit or as subtle as you need to be. Feel free to be creative with your altar. I use sometimes a 7-day jar candle to represent fire. Sometimes I'll just put a feather or a fan for air, and I'll just have a little bowl or cup of water for water. You can do whatever you want. It's your altar. Make it personal. Make it meaningful to you. Sometimes I have pictures of my ancestors and relatives on there. When you do keep an altar and you notice things that aren't working well in your life for you, it's possible that you've let your altar become cluttered, dirty, messy, or dusty. You may want to just start by taking everything off the altar, clean everything off, wipe everything, dust everything down, put a fresh new cloth on, and reorder it. Make it nice and pretty again. And notice if things don't turn around for you in general. Something that simple is very frequently all that's necessary to change things. Another essential item for your altar, which many people don't know about or which they overlook, and some people are afraid of because they say that it's a portal to other dimensions and it's dangerous, which is nonsense, at least if you're working the way we're working, is a magic mirror. I'm not talking about a black mirror. I'm talking about a regular handheld mirror, like a vanity mirror that you hold in your hand where you can check your makeup or your hair. You can find one of these at a beauty supply store or anywhere that sells mirrors. You can consecrate this mirror as you would with any of your other tools, like you learned how to do in a witch's primer, and keep it by or on your altar. And then when starting a new spell, or if you need to boost your faith, you can take that consecrated mirror and look at your reflection and affirm to yourself that you can achieve your goals. Repeat positive statements like, you can do this. It's okay for you to have this. Whatever you need, encourage yourself in the mirror. That bypasses months, sometimes even years of working on yourself just by talking to yourself in the mirror. You want to keep telling yourself whatever it is that you're encouraging yourself about until the reflection in the mirror appears to agree with you. This really speeds things up quite a bit, and I recommend that you try it. When you do discover reasons for your lack of faith in yourself, such as not feeling good enough, use the mirror to reinforce your positive new reality for yourself until you sense some agreement from your reflection. Mirror magic is practical. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. It doesn't require complex rituals. It's simply a tool to communicate with your deep mind. And for best results, you want to perform your mirror magic in as dimly lit of a room as you can, but still being able to see your reflection. Candlelight's ideal, or very low lighting. It helps to see your reflection as both yourself and your deeper self, rather than just as an image of yourself like you would use when you're fixing your hair. Now for anointing oil and incense. Now I'm including some sample recipes for anointing oil in your packet. For anointing oil, all you really need is some sort of vegetable oil. You can use olive oil, peanut oil, grapeseed oil, whatever kind of oil. Not mineral oil. I don't like mineral oil for anointing oil. Some kind of vegetable oil. And to that, you add just a tiny pinch of salt. The salt will not be absorbed by the oil. It will just sit at the bottom of your bottle. You can say a little blessing and consecrate it just like you've learned how to consecrate everything else. You can keep that on or by your altar and use that for all your anointing. Or you can use some of those recipes for anointing oils if you like scented oils. Additionally, your packet gives you some incense recipes. I don't burn as much incense as I used to, and when I do burn it, I burn it outdoors. Usually when I want to burn incense indoors, I use an incense warmer rather than an incense burner. I don't use a thurible with coal indoors. I just don't like breathing those fumes, and I don't like what it does to my paint job. So I'll take the incense and I'll put it either in an incense warmer, an electric incense warmer, Or, just like I've shown many times, my thurible is an oil warmer. It's got a little candle, and you light the candle. It heats up a bowl. I have a little bit of water in that bowl. That starts to boil, and I put the incense material right in the boiling water, and I get a nice, beautiful vapor instead of smoke. And that's what I use. But if you prefer to burn incense indoors, by all means do it. But even though it's dramatic to have billowing incense, it's not really good for your lungs, and it can also be distracting. A little bit of incense, if you're burning it indoors, is enough to fragrance the room. But if you do like a lot of billowing incense, it is dramatic and it can be fun. Just do it outdoors, or make sure that at least you've got a lot of ventilation in your home. There's 3 guided meditations. The first one is about 3 to 5 minutes long, and that's a morning meditation. And you try to do it every morning as you wake up for this first week. Eventually, you won't need the recording. You'll be able to do it yourself, but just use the recording for now. Ideally, do it in bed if it's at all possible. If not, just do it as soon as you can before you get too awake. And this will help you start your day in a very magical, positive mindset. There's also a meditation for as you're falling asleep. And then there's also a daytime meditation that you can do once a day whenever it works best for you. And so those 3 meditations, if you can fit those into every single day this week, that would be great, because there's no spell work this week. So you've got a lot to do with your lists and working on yourself. But if you can incorporate these meditations, that's great. Also, if you have the ability to have some sort of altar, even if it's very stealth in your home, this would be the week to get that started. So this week, you're going to focus on your goals, your elimination lists, your daily meditational practices, getting your altar together, and it's going to set the stage for some pretty intensive magic. So I hope you have a good week with this first week on Witchcraft Beyond the Basics, and I thank you so much for spending some time with me. And we'll see you next week for Lesson 2. Blessed be.